go into.
Whether that's 100% accurate or not, it's the one I'm using. So.
Show everything? No, I think it's.
Okay, are we ready?
Here.
Make sure it says streaming.
I know I've seen it before, but like here. Oh, yeah. Awesome. So you use that for your meeting notes? Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
And streaming?
How do I see myself supposed to say me? Oh, here.
This is gonna get beamed up.
Okay. All right. It is 12:00 p.m. on Tuesday, November 23rd, 2021, and I'll call the meeting of the Manitowoc Public School District Board of Education to order. We will start with our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Okay, thank you. And I will ask our board secretary to take roll.
Colin Brunel,
Here.
Lisa Johnston,
Here.
Dave Nichols,
Here.
Meredith Sauer,
Here.
Stacy Selner, Carrie Trapp,
Here.
and Kathy Willis.
Here.
Okay, and then we have the minutes from our November 9th meeting. If there's no questions on those, I would ask for a motion and a second to approve.
I move they approve. They'd be approved.
I'll second.
Any additions or corrections to those minutes? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Good to me.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. I have no communications other than emails that we might get or phone calls. Committee reports, curriculum, Meredith.
Yep,
I believe you
so
met yesterday, right?
we did.
Okay.
We had rescheduled our meeting and held it yesterday virtually. The only thing on our agenda was to review new course submissions for Lincoln that will come up in new business. And all of the additional documentation for those classes. And that was it. That's all we had.
Okay, any questions for
This is bad.
Meredith? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion and a second to approve the minutes from that meeting.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion?
I'll be voting, no, not because I disagree with the minutes, just because of the submission, so.
Well, if you agree with the minutes, that's what we're approving.
I
We're
know.
not approving the
No,
content unless
Right.
it's
that's just what I'm
improper.
choosing to do.
You gotta do better than that, Kyle. I mean, come on.
Okay. Fair
All
enough.
right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No,
All right. Okay, report of the superintendent, personnel report. Joyce, you're here.
Chris is here. Yeah. I thought you were away for another week. Wait for when you like to be.
I am back. All right, hi, thank you. Let's see, you would have had a personnel report in board book. I guess I will just pause and ask you if everyone has any questions.
Any questions for Joyce on the personnel report?
Joyce, I do have a question on the personnel report. There were two individuals that had start dates effective prior to the documents. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so once in a while, not often, some of it typically would just be timing. But there are times when we have interviewed, vetted candidates, and they are able to start prior to bringing them to the board for approval. So what we, again, it's important that we want adults in front of kids. So occasionally you'll see that, and they are considered soft until such time that they're approved by the board. So I think there's two people on here that may have started. And again, we consider them substitutes until.
Yeah, so what we're approving here would be making these individuals regular employees, right? Okay, I get it. Because it could be denied, and then they would have to either remain a sub or you'd have to find somebody else. Okay, I get it. Any other questions on the personnel report? Hearing none, I entertain a motion and a second to approve.
I'll move we approve the personnel report.
A second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you, Joyce. Then we have our resolution authorizing the redemption of certain of the general obligation promissory notes. Is Angela?
Yeah.
You can speak to that? Yeah.
This is just a matter of procedure. We need to have, as a part of the budget, we approved the advance payment of some of our debt that's in callable status. That means that we can pay it in advance now. So as I mentioned, the memo, it's due to money that was put aside over past budgets that we're able to apply at this time. And it'll mean that at the end of the next fiscal year, we'll be debt free officially.
Oh.
Happy to take any questions, otherwise we'll just need a motion. The timeline is that it's
Yep.
posted to the public for 30 days, and then through the debt processing or the bond, the people that help with bond issuance, and they'll take care of that, and then January 3rd, 2022, we'll take care of the payment.
So we save on interest now. Huh?
Correct,
Yeah.
yes. About $60,000,
Okay.
$64,231 is the estimated savings. So it's great.
Right.
And I really can't, Ken Mishler planned for this several years ago. It's really.
About 2016 or 15, we came together and agreed to a debt repayment plan that would allow us to repay it in this period of time. There were some accelerated payments we were going to have to make. We made those already. And then this was included in that. And so this is part of that repayment plan so that we would potentially be debt free, as Angela said. But yeah, Ken pretty much came up with that.
Wow, that's cool.
He gets a lot of credit, but you allowed it to continue as well through the means of putting together our budgets. So.
Yeah, so it's good news for us, so.
So where do we say yay?
Well, we need a motion and a second to approve this
Okay, I move to approve.
resolution.
Oops,
Go
sorry.
ahead, Kathy. Yeah.
I move to approve the resolution authorizing the redemption of certain of the general obligation promissory notes dated July 2nd, 2014.
And we need a second to that.
I'll second.
Any further discussion on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, good. Then we'll move on to the district report card, and I will turn that over to Superintendent Holtzman.
So thank you. I have hopefully forwarded all of you the access of the district report card. And then you also have access to all of our individual school report cards. Our focus today is to review the data specifically in the district report card. Jason and Pam will walk us through those 10 pages as succinctly as possible. I think it's to be noted that as we review the district data, that's a snapshot of a period of time, either a day for the high school or over a couple of days if you're elementary schools back in April of 2020. That the DPI did put forward in their communications to all, saying that we did take a test in the middle of a pandemic, and that should be considered as we look at where our students are. But we also know that there's some valuable information here. And so what we're going to do is take a look at some of our areas of growth and successes, specifically regarding the district report card. And I will turn it over to Jason and Pam to kind of lead us through that conversation.
All right, thank you very much. Just a couple reminders, as Mr. Holton mentioned, but we're going to really focus on the district overview, which is pages 1 through 10. And you should have access to schools, and if you need help accessing school data, please let us know. We'll help you. But that's our focus for today. Another reminder is that December 14th, the next time we gather, that Pam and I will give an overview of longitudinal data. So for our district, and we'll give some building goals. We've mentioned prior that all our schools have spent time this summer with their leadership teams looking at data and developing two goals. One, an instructional strategy goal that's really geared towards the adults and how they will learn and grow. And then a student outcome data goal, and that's about student achievement. So on December 14th, we'll give that longitudinal data look for the district as well as building goals to the board. As Mr. Holzman mentioned, that it's just important to remind us that this data is a snapshot in time, right? It's for many students 1 day or a couple days. And as we enter this data, I think we need to be mindful of how we talk about the data, knowing that I think it highlights some areas of growth. There are some celebrations, and what's most important is what we're doing about it next. So we're going to do some flipping around, so I'll make sure that I identify the page we're on. I'm going to start on page 1. At the top, as we kind of talked about last time, are some district details. So district is obviously 4K to 12. Our enrollment as listed here is 4760. It's important to remember that that is full academic year. So it is likely that our daily enrollment is higher than that. But for state reporting, it's a full academic year. So that reflects that. Percent open enrollment. This is the first year on the right-hand side that districts were given the opportunity to provide a top page blurb. So that's a blurb that Mr. Holzman and Pam and I worked on together. The first sentence, I hope it's familiar to you, that's our mission statement. Those additional pieces there, just want to highlight a couple of things. We talk about equitable instruction. And when we talk about that, we're really talking about providing every learner what they need to be college, career, and community ready when they leave our district. Two other words that I want to highlight later on in the sentence there is identity and agency. So we talk about growing students' identity and agency. And identity in this context really means seeing oneself as a doer, a knower, and sense maker of content. So we want students to see themselves as mathematicians, and see themselves as historians, and see themselves as folks that can navigate literacy. We also talk about agency, and that's really our work to develop confidence and confidence, capacity, and willingness for students to engage in the content. So not only do they see themselves as a mathematician, they want to engage in the math. So that's what those terms mean when we talk about that. We'll turn our attention to the student groups section there. There's really two parts. We see a bar graph on the left. And again, it's just to continue to remind us that this is district data, right? So this is by subgroup percentages of students. On the right there, those are just some specific data points around students with disabilities. So that's 16.1% district-wide, 46.6% for economically disadvantaged, and then 7.9% for our EL learners, English learners. Please.
How do you come up with the number of 46.6 for economically disadvantaged? Where do you get that number from?
The state gives it to us, and it's a combination of data sets, the best that I can understand. They look at the percent free and reduced lunch, and there's also another component of, given the fact that we do provide lunch, they look at social and economic data from our community. So we don't provide that data. This percent is given to us by the state.
So how do we rank compared to other districts in the state? That just seems very high to me.
Yeah, I would have to find out where we rank, but I would say that my guess would be this percent is actually lower than what's really reflected in our district. So I can certainly find where we rank, but I think over time we see that, especially at secondary level, less students or families self-reporting. So I would venture to guess that this percent is lower than what is really reflected in our buildings.
I don't have the information with me, but I've done those, sorted out the information based on one of these as the factor, and we're well in the upper half, the number of disadvantaged students. Whether it's a completely accurate number, or I believe it is a little bit different than what's actually here, because it's only based on certain criteria, a couple of criteria, but we're well near the front half of the data rather than bottom half with our numbers. So,
Well, that right there tells us we've got some issues in our community.
well,
Yeah.
it's one of the factors that plays a role in the test data, yes.
In a
Yeah,
former
sure.
life, I was a high school principal, and we over years, we saw the trend that as compared to elementary, middle, our free and reduced lunch numbers were significantly lower just because we just saw less folks.
If anybody wants a comparison, I can sort it for you and send it to you if you'd like. So for those, if you're
Yeah,
interested.
listen.
Colin, go ahead.
So would a individual fall into, say, two categories, say, just for example, disabilities and disadvantage, or English learners, would that be stated in those numbers, or would it be broken onto, they would just fall into that category and then they're added into the other category just the same?
Yeah, they would be in both. So they would be represented in both.
Yeah, the United Way, Alice study put Manitowoc disadvantaged, people in poverty, basically, at 48%, compared to Two Rivers at 48%, compared to, just the other communities in the county. So it seemed to me, just honestly, it's right on that same kind of thing. And I would bet it's lots of corroboration, and it's probably even that more.
Researching the DPI's economically disadvantaged number also likely indicates the number of direct certification children and families, which is different than those who actually apply. So there's a percentage of families within a community who have automatically, because they are getting services in other state agencies, get direct certification through free and reduced. And generally, public schools use the number free and reduced because that's the number we generate. It's a little different. Economically disadvantaged is the number that the state generates, which is not strictly related to free and reduced. So our population would lean more towards 50% in free and reduced, whereas economically disadvantaged is 46. But it's the same for every district across the state. So, where our position would be, whether you're at the top percent or bottom percent, the economically disadvantaged is calculated the same.
I'm going to move on to our score summary, and that left-hand side really has three components. One is that overall score of 59.8. So again, there's a score of 0 to 100. So our score is 59.8. Just to the right of that is a score of meets expectations. And as we talked about during the last meeting, there's everything from fails to meet expectations to significantly exceeds. So we're meeting expectations. And then there's a 1 through 5 star rating. So there's really three ways to look at it. We have a 3-star rating, which again just matches that meets expectation.
So then, so I have in front of me what that would have been for the 2018, 2019, the accountability ranking, and then how that sets up for this 2020 to 2021 moving forward. The goalposts were basically moved backward. Why was that? Did they say this to why 59.8 is going to be a meets expectations instead of meets few expectations as it would be in 18 to 19?
And I'm not sure what the goalpost moving exactly means, but I would say that as we spoke to last time, the way the report card is set up has changed, right? So, and I will highlight some of those changes again, but two significant areas that have changed are the priority area weights, which I will talk about in a moment, and then that target group outcomes. Those are significant changes on the formatting and calculus of the report card. Did I answer your question? Okay. Yep. And then I'm going to move on to priority area weights on the right-hand side there. You'll see there's 4 sections there. Everyone have a color copy, is that right? Yeah. Okay. So the green and lighter blue on the bottom, well, for this year, I don't want to say always, but are 25%. So target group outcomes, which we'll dig into more, is a 25% weight on the overall score. And on track to graduation is also 25%. The top 2 components are, as you can see, are not always 25%. And here's why. The state has based a higher percent of weight on growth, and that's connected to our percent of economically disadvantaged. So what we will see in our district and school report cards is that the higher percent of economically disadvantaged equates to or turns into a higher weighted percent for growth.
So why would they put that higher weighting on growth versus achievement in a report card?
Well, I believe the state is attempting to have the report card do a better job of reflecting subgroups that need growth. And we'll talk more about that. But when you look at target group outcomes along with growth, we're really looking at a subgroup of students that over time have shown that we need to support their growth differently. And so this is a reflection of that, I believe. I'm just going to move to the priority area scores there. There's an achievement. I'm looking on the left-hand side of page 1. So achievement is really, again, it correlates to that area weight. So it's 17.3% of the total score, right? Bless you. And our achievement score for our district as a whole is 53.7. And that comes from 2 parts. So the first part is English language arts, as you see there. It's on a scale of 0 to 100. Our district score is 56.2. The light blue there, the state is 61.4. For mathematics, MPSD 51.1. The state is 59.4. We go back to that 53.7. That's just an average of those 2 scores. So we get the ELA, English language arts, the math, we add and divide by 2. Not we, but the state, and we get that 53.7 score.
I'm going to direct your attention to page 3, which gives more of a detailed look at the achievement score. So again, you'll see that priority area score on the left-hand side. It does indicate in the top little blurb there that this is a points-based proficiency system, and that's been what it has been for many years. And what that means is that for a student who scores proficient, we get a point. For a student who scores advanced, we get 1.5 points. If they're basic, we get 0.5, and if they're below basic, we get 0. So that point system is then used to calculate that score, and it's a calculation for ELA and for math. On the right-hand side, just below that little blurb, you will see that where our district compares to other districts in the state. And so our scores, our priority area score with the combination of ELA and math is 16.6% higher than other districts in the state, similar districts. When we look at the middle part there, it shows you by subgroup. And again, this is a part of something that they've done for several years, is to break down the data by subgroups so that we can look at
the gaps between different groups of students. And so these are the subgroups that the state identifies for us to look at. And you will see how those subgroups scored in that blue lined area there, bar graphs. And then off to the right-hand side of each bar graph, you will see their change in points from the previous year. And so, for example, in English language arts, the Asian population scored 44.9, and that was a negative 6.8 change from last year. Same with math on the other side, you'll have the bar graph, which indicates the performance of that subgroup. And then on the right-hand side of that bar graph there, the change from the previous year. Down at the bottom, you will see the performance levels over time. So that looks at 2017-18, 18-19, and 2021 data. Should note that this data is based upon our statewide assessments of Forward at the elementary and middle level, Aspire at the 9th and 10th grade level, and then ACT at the 11th grade level. You don't see any 2019-20 data because the only group that took the assessment in 2019-20 was the junior class, the ACT. So the state did not do a report card calculation or proficiency calculations for that year, but that will give you the trend in the number of students that are at each of those proficiency levels in those 3 years in English language arts and those 3 years in math.
So you're saying there's no longitudinal sort of data, right?
Not for 1920. The bottom.
Okay,
red.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
bottom
because I
red.
was wondering, I mean, all these are, you know, all these, the changes are all negative. Is that been typical? Or has there been some, like on page 3, it's, you know, the English language for Asians, now it's at 4.6, and that's a 7.1 drop from what then?
When we look at that from their previous score, so what their proficiency rating was
Okay,
last year,
Okay,
that's the change. I will talk a little bit more about the subgroup data when we talk on the 14th of December.
okay.
So I don't
okay,
have that
okay,
in front of me
all
by
right,
subgroup, but yeah, Carrie, that score just represents what was the change from the previous year's score.
Okay,
There, as you're highlighting, there will be some asterisks because there will be gaps in the longitudinal data when we did not do the state
okay,
testing.
yeah.
And we'll highlight that on the 14th.
So with this total student population, and given that we were, I think at that point, April, whenever that was, April this year, right?
Mhm.
Still potentially in blended mode as well. If a student didn't test for one reason or another, are they still included in the denominator?
No.
So it's only the testers that are.
Yep.
Okay.
Only the students that test. So I will direct your attention now that it's a good segue to page 4,
It was
which
not a-
shows our test participation rate. Right at the top. This is not something that factors into our scoring, but I should note that for federal accountability, the federal level, they do expect us to test 95% of our population. They do include a little note. Again, they are aware that we were in a pandemic last year. And so they as well have said, you know, pay attention to that, but they recognize the pandemic's implications. But to our credit in our district, our schools did a fantastic job of testing. You'll see our testing in ELA was 94.3% of our students who could test tested. And the same in math, 94.2% of the students who could test tested. We did have more parents than typical opt out of statewide testing, and many of those were in a situation where they chose to have their children virtual, full virtual, and the testing is not provided in a virtual format. It's all in person. So that factors in a little bit into that rate. And then you see that they provide us with information on what was our lowest participating subgroup, and in both cases, it was our Black student population. Who, again, that number represents the percentage of students in that subgroup who could have tested based upon that, how many of them actually did. So 82.4% of the eligible Black students actually tested in ELA, and then 81.7% of eligible Black students in math tested. And then at the bottom, that gives you that subgroup performance. Carrie, I think maybe this answers your question. I forgot that this chart was here, but maybe this helps to answer. When you're looking at the populations of subgroup, again, you get to see that 3-year data for those subgroups from 17, 18, 18, 19, and 2021. Keep in mind that the first row on each chart is all students in the state, and then all of the rows below that are our students. So the first row represents state, and then the rest of those subgroup pieces are our students in our district over time.
Yeah. I mean, it's a kind of an interesting thing in that it's apples and oranges, really, isn't it? Especially with the last year. But, I'd like to see how the percentage of economic disadvantage has varied over the period too.
Well, it shows you
And
that, Carrie. This data shows you that.
where does it show me that?
It's the third, under English language arts and under mathematics, it's economically disadvantaged, gives you the percentage that's below basic. Goes from 33.3% in 2017 to 45.1%. I mean, you can track that along the way.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm gonna take us back to page 1, please. We're gonna look at growth. So kind of the middle of the page, the priority area scores, the right-hand side is growth. And just a reminder that this score is based on students' level of growth in comparison to the state's predicted number. State's predicted number, not ours. And they do take into account prior achievement, and if a student has an IEP or is an English learner. So then, again, the state gives us those predictions. So it's really based on the growth of, and this is all students. That will change the next time in another area. It is, again, based on 3 years of data, with the highest weight being the most recent data set. I'd like to say last year, but it's not always the case. So the most recent data is the highest weight. And just like achievement, growth score, that 59.4 for the district, is an average between ELA and math. So the score for ELA, the score for math as a district, and then added and divided by 2. Again, just a reminder that this area, this growth area, accounts for 32.7% of our total score because of the percent of our economically disadvantaged. The far right there, there's some bars there. So English language arts, our score for growth is 60.3 compared to the state. That light blue there is 66. In mathematics, we're at 58.4. And for the state, it's 66. Again, a reminder that it's district, right? Grades 3 through 11.
And then I'll direct your attention to page 5, which gives the detail of the growth. Up at the top there in that little blurb, they reference this is a value-added model, which basically means that as Jason indicated, they create a predictive score based upon students' prior performance. And they add to it for students who fit into certain subgroups. EL students, special education students, and our economically disadvantaged students. So they factor those things in when they're setting that growth target for those groups of students. The other thing I should point out is that the score is calculated initially on a 0 to 6 scale and then converted over to a 0 to 100 point scale. So that's the information provided in that upper blurb. You'll see on the right-hand side, our score was the same or higher than 20% of the states in or 20% of the districts in the state. And then down at the bottom, it gives you a breakdown again by subgroup of those scores. So you'll see that gray line that goes down the center of each column there represents average. And then that average is set at 3. And then you'll see by subgroup where the growth, the average growth is. So you'll see that in English language arts, our students with disabilities had average growth. They hit the 3-point mark right there. And then the same with mathematics. It gives you an indication of how the students performed based upon that average of 3, where they were as a group.
Wow, I mean, this song, I don't know if I'm reading this right, but it certainly looks to me, certainly on the English language, that growth was pretty uniform by group, right?
Yes, you have just a few. So if you look at our subgroup in English language arts, the English language learners is the group that is farthest to the left of that average line. And then our students with disabilities and our students who are not economically disadvantaged are the closest to that line. Students with disabilities were at average.
In the students with disabilities category, are our students who have IEPs included in that group? Right?
Yes,
Okay.
that's how a student would be categorized.
Okay.
at
I
the
thought
state
so.
level.
That was
An active IEP. So it wouldn't mean necessarily that a student that has been exited from special education, they would not be considered any longer a student with disability. So it's a student that's with an active IEP.
So would the state consider this progress then when it comes to our inequity with students with IEPs? I mean, they have the greatest number of advancement, this group. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think, so the question that, or the identification that the state has provided was that we have identified too many students who are Black as EBD.
Yeah.
They're not talking to us about their achievement.
But Kathy, you are right.
You're right.
The federal accountability system looks at the performance, how we're doing on our outcomes for every one of the subgroups. And one of the subgroups that they are concerned about is students with disabilities. For example, we have had some of our schools in the past receive warnings that your students with disabilities are not performing at a high enough level in comparison to other groups. And so that means that those schools have had to take a look at that and say, okay, what do we see is the need here, and how do we make sure that we're addressing that? And so that's part of the reason why they're providing us with this information and encouraging us to look at those subgroups, is for that very reason, is to make sure that we're seeing things like this. There is growth. Each school has their own report like this, and so they will need to look at that too, because this is a district average, but individually by school, they'll want to be paying attention to those subgroups as well.
This is like the only figure where we're actually on point. The rest are lagging behind. So I thought that was a little bit of encouragement.
It is celebration.
You mean growth?
In growth, the other
Yeah,
area of growth
yeah.
that we're actually hitting the mark there with the average, right?
Yeah.
So the one time it's not in all of our figures.
We're just gonna ask you to return to page 1. And we're gonna look at the bottom left corner, that target group outcomes. This is a new component of the report card, so I think that speaks to Colin's earlier question about the goalposts, right? This is a very new component to the report card, and it, as highlighted in the priority area weights, it's counts for 25% of our overall score. Good. So this target group outcome piece really looks at students in the lower quartile in each of these areas. So this is not by subgroup. This is by overall number of students, and it takes the lower quartile of students in achievement, puts them in a group. And it's achievement in mathematics and English language arts. And then we look at growth, the lower quartile in growth area in ELA. So both those bars represent ELA and math. The lower quartile as it relates to growth for all students, ELA and math, puts those students in a group. For our report card for the district, it looks at chronic absenteeism. So the lower quartile of students, the most absent students, and chronic by the state definition is 10% or more of days missed. So again, this is the bottom fourth of students that miss the most days. And then the last one,
Question
Alan,
about
a question.
the chronic absenteeism, so like would COVID absences be factored into that chronic absenteeism?
yes.
Okay, so if somebody's out for COVID, that's gonna be the category, okay.
And then the bottom for our district, I'm going to talk about some uniquenesses by school, but for our district, we have a graduation marker, and again, that's lower quartile. When you look at schools, our elementary and middle schools won't have this bar for graduation. They'll have attendance as a whole. But for our district, we see the graduation rate. And the state is really calling this target group outcomes, this section, a report card within the report card. Because again, we're looking at bottom quartile and how those students are being supported, growing, achieving, attending, and graduating. Really, so this is a subgroup of all students and measuring their progress. The bottom quartile is not based on 3 years like the other areas, but it's based on prior year. And again, it represents 25% of our total score. So again, our total score for this area is 45.8. And you can see the numbers on a scale of 0 to 100 for our district. We don't get a comparison for the state for this area. And 14.5 for achievement, 57.5 for growth, 69.9 for chronic absenteeism, and then 83.8 for graduation. Pam's going to turn us to another page to give some more details on this area.
So if you look at page 6 in the packet, on this page, they explain in the top blurb there that really the reason the state provides this information to us and made the switch to the target group outcomes is so that schools are really pushed to focus on the learners who are struggling the most and making sure that they are getting the additional support that they need while also trying to improve outcomes for all students. So it is important to keep in mind that there isn't data displayed if the target group has fewer than 20 students in it. So we did have 3 elementary schools who do not have a target group outcome score. And that is because for elementaries, because of the gap in testing, only 5th grade was really looked at for a target group outcome. Madison, Riverview, and Monroe would have had to have 40 students testing and included in these areas in order for them to have a target group outcome, and they did not have that. So they didn't get a score because the state says you have to have at least 20 in the target group, and that 20 can't be 50% or more of your actual population of students. So they do not have this score. So when you see their little pie, they actually have more weight on growth in their little priority area weighting pie because of that. So next year, it should kind of even out as we get more assessment data.
So you had schools that did not, they were not able to be trackable in the target outcomes. And then that's got a 25% weighting. So then what they did with that 25% weighting for those schools then is it then went to the growth aspect where it already has the majority of the weighting, is that correct?
Well, that's where you'll see that growth looks bigger. I don't know exactly how much went to each area, achievement or growth, because I don't get to see like before and after. But what I can tell you is in those schools, that pie chart piece there, their growth piece is much bigger than what we would see here.
Just for those.
They don't
three
have a
schools.
25% there. They have a 3-pronged, and it's not 3 evenly split. It tends to look like more was put in growth. But I don't get to see a before and after. I just get to see the ultimate breakdown by school. Does that make sense? I wouldn't.
It
see-
does make sense, but it just, I'm curious as to why they would put it, so much focus on the growth, but that's not, it's not your report.
The
card.
mystery
Yeah.
map,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
That's the mystery map. So the other thing I should mention is, Jason alluded to on the front page there, you don't get to see the comparison to the state. But on this page, we do get to see the comparison of the target group of students who aren't in the target group. And so, for example, when you look at that English language arts achievement, the target group had a 16.6 proficiency rating, and the non-target group had a 72.4% proficiency rating. So you get to see the gap really between that target group and the non-target group. It is interesting, and Kathy, here's another celebration. Our target group had a higher performance in terms of growth at a 60.3 than the non-target group, which meant, in ELA, our target group students actually were making more growth than some students that were in our non-target group. And
Think
then
of how racially diverse the target group is.
I would say, Carrie, that in most cases, it's a smattering of all different subgroups. So, we would take a look, each school gets their own as well. So we get one as a district and each school gets their own. And just in looking at a few of those, it's pretty diverse.
Okay.
And I think that depending on the category we're talking about, whether it's attendance related or whether it is achievement related, you see a little bit of a difference. Chronic absenteeism is at the bottom. And then for graduation, just wanted to point out, so our attendance data that factors into this report card and the graduation data that factors into the report card are a year behind, because of the fact that the state spends time working with schools to kind of close out and verify attendance and graduation data at the end of the school year up until now December of this year. So from June through December, there's this validation and verification of the data. So all that data lags a year behind. So the graduation here that you will see is based upon the average of the 1920 4-year rate, meaning students who graduate within 4 years, up to students who graduate within 7 years. So it looks at that rate, how many students graduated 4 years, after 4 years, and then how many students graduated and completed sometime between the 4-year mark and the 7-year mark. And that's where it takes those two rates and averages them.
How about the chronic absenteeism? I don't know if I'm reading the scoring figure right. The target group is 69.9, which
That means
sounds
that
high, but the non-target group is 88.5. So is
the higher number
the
is,
non-target group more chronically absent?
no.
Oh,
But, you're right. You're good point, Carrie. This one is a little strange because the higher number here is a better number in this case.
Okay.
And what that means is 69.9% of students in the target group met the chronic absent criteria.
All right.
88.5.
Well, then it isn't.
Or
yeah,
excuse
it
me,
isn't
did
as-
not
it
meet,
isn't
did
as
not
dire
meet,
as I thought.
did not meet. They were
Yeah.
not chronically absent. So
Yeah.
69.9% of those students were not chronically absent. 88.5% of students in the non-target group were not chronically absent.
So like a 70% difference.
That one's a little bit, it's
Yeah,
strange
okay.
how it kind of turns a little bit.
I'm gonna ask you to flip back to page one more time, please. And in the lower right corner, looks at on track to graduation. So again, the state has selected 4 components to look at for this category of on track to graduation. Unlike the previous, that target group outcomes, we're back to looking at all students, right? This isn't a lower quartile piece like the previous section. And so our score here for this area, for our district, which is 25% of our total score, our score is 78.7. And we get back here to our district and state. So chronic absenteeism for all students, that area 83.9 compared to 87. Graduation 88.6 compared to 91.5. Then they look at just 3rd grade ELA. So this represents all 3rd grade students in the area of English language arts, and that's 51.9 compared to 58.9. And then all 8th grade math. So all 8th grade math, 44.8 compared to 55.3. Again, these 4 components lead to that score of 78.7 that the state has identified as those on track for graduation markers.
Why don't they give us the 3rd grade English? I mean, the 8th grade English, so that there's a comparison.
I don't know the answer to that, to be quite honest. The state has just said these are the 4 that they consider those on track to graduation. I'm going to turn it back over to Pam for page 7, please.
So page 7 just reiterates what Jason mentioned, making progress towards the completion of their K-12 education. These are the factors that they look at. Again, a reminder that if a school does not have a high school graduating class, or middle school and or elementary would see attendance rate there instead of graduation rate. And so that's just a repeat on that page of the scoring information that Jason went through. And then if you look on page 8, it gives you the breakdown a little bit more of chronic absenteeism rates. And then it gives you a breakdown of graduation rates over time. So you'll see the rate for all students in the state is the first row in each chart. And then our students below that by subgroup. And you'll be able to see the chronic absenteeism rate for each of those subgroups. And then you'll get to see the graduation rates for each of those subgroups. Chronic absenteeism, they give you the 3 years worth of data. And then in the graduation rate, they give you the 4-year graduation rate and the 7-year graduation rate for each of those subgroups. And again, this is all students factor into the score. This breakdown is just for informational purposes.
So Asian kids are almost never absent, right?
They have a very good attendance rate. Mhm.
Although it's gone up.
Just to ask you to turn to page 9. 9 and 10 are the last 2 pages. They are new components of the report card. And it's also important to note that this data does not factor into our overall score. It's for informational purposes only.
This is where we're really good, isn't it?
Celebrations.
Yeah.
So the page 9 is a post-secondary preparation. Again, it's for high school. This is just 9 through 12. Again, it does not affect our score. And this is data that we self-report. So if you're familiar with Infinite Campus, that's our student information system, working diligently to make sure that the data, the courses, our student enrollment are accurate, because it will be reflected here. So 4 categories, kind of in the upper 2/3 there. Advanced courses, our district 27.8%, state 19.2%, things that would align to this category, or courses that align to this category, would be our AP, heard of that, the advanced placement courses, and IB, International Baccalaureate. This next category to the right is dual enrollment. For our district, we're at 29.0% compared to the state at 17.8. These are things like our Rising Phoenix, our College Here Now, where our students receive credit from our district and an outside entity as well. Moving to the right again, industry recognized credentials, state district, 1.0, state 1.4. These are things like OSHA certifications and CNA certification. Those are those certification programs that our students work through at the high school level. And then the last category, furthest to the right, is work-based learning. District 4.5, state 2.4. These are things like youth apprenticeship that we celebrate in the spring every year, work experience for our students. The bottom of this page is a breakdown by those same categories: advanced, dual, credentials, and work-based learning, and broken down by student subgroups. So again, highlight some areas that we can grow in, and highlight some celebrations. But it's a snapshot again of by student population.
449 dual enrollments. I mean, that's amazing.
That is truly amazing.
Yeah.
Matches some of that data that Mr. Tennis brought forward when we talked about college, career, and community readiness. And we looked at 3 years worth of data, and it's a focus at Lincoln, and it's reflected here. And McKinley. Last page, bless you, page 10. Again, just a couple reminders. This is 9 through 12, informational purposes only. And again, self-reported through our work at Infinite Campus. This is kind of fine arts snapshot. So participation by type of arts, starting on the left there, the upper 2/3 there, art and design, 18.0 for our district, 24.7 for the state. Dance, here's a celebration, 3.1% for our district versus 0.3%. Music, 20.5 versus 21.3 for the state. And then the furthest right is theater, 0.6 versus 1.9 for the state. The bottom is the same as page 9, shows the same data, but broken down by student subgroup. Again, highlighting some areas that I think we can continue to think about how do we grow, and some definite celebrations. Please.
The number of students were under each of these areas, is this from the high school only?
Yes, 9/12. Again, a reminder that December 14th will bring some longitudinal data that will have some asterisks by it just because of the last several years. And then we'll bring those school goals. And each school, just a reminder again, has 2 goals that their leadership teams have worked through this summer. And the first goal is around instructional practices, and that's what our buildings are working through to grow the adults. And the second goal is student outcome goal. And that's a reflection of our schools. They didn't have these report cards, but did have some of the data. So they dug into that data this summer to work towards the identification of 2 goals. So December 14th will bring those as well.
What is the current enrollment in grades 9 through 12 in our school? Do you have a number of that?
I would be guessing.
Yeah, if you just give me a second, I can give you pretty numbers. You know, my head will say 1,500, but
Bless you.
Do some math, because I have to add some 100. So, our high school enrollment, again, this is as of 9/8, would be 1,515.
Oh,
Is that McKinley? and
McKinley and Lincoln, 1,515.
Any other questions?
oh, so about the third of our kids are, the high schools are enrolled in, enrolled in advanced stuff. That's pretty amazing.
Right, I think I would also acknowledge that those numbers are not reflective of what happened last year and this year, right? They're happened in 2019, so technically 2 years ago. And since that point, we've really added a significant number of students in Verizon, Phoenix, and College Here and Now. And the curriculum committee heard recently some new courses that would likely expand some opportunities for the dual credit coursework students. So I think that number is going to continue to accelerate.
Colin,
We have 95% of the districts in the state going the same or higher or are on track to graduation metric. But yet we have 29% or 449 students going dual enrollments, advanced placements. How are we able to have such high numbers in advanced courses and dual enrollment, yet are on track to graduation being where that's at?
I think they're looking at you have to look at the factors that go into on-track to graduation, our third grade ELA performance, 8th grade math, and then that absenteeism attendance along with graduation rates. So, when we look at dual enrollment, we'd say those students are likely on a pathway to graduation, but they're not looking at the same factors in terms of dual enrollment. Takes into consideration a smaller population of students where those other factors are taking the full population. It is available to all students in 9-12, but these on track to graduation calculations are not the same. And Lincoln would have their own on track to graduation that wouldn't take into account, obviously, 3rd grade English, ELA, and 8th grade math. It's going to take into account attendance and then their overall graduation rate.
So did some of those other lower grades reflect in that score on track to graduation as
Yes.
well? So then would it be safe to say that there's a possibility that this, if, we have we can easily even say that there probably will be even more decline if we have a high number going on track to graduation and doing so well in advanced courses and dual enrollment and things like that, that some of those other grades that are lower would then be bringing down that on track to graduation number.
I think they're including separate things, so not necessarily, because the dual enrollment is just a count of the number of students that are participating in courses.
Mhm.
The only factor at the high school, the only 2 factors that in the high school that are calculating into this on track to graduation are the attendance rates of those students and the graduation rates of those students. So as a district, those 2 pieces, the 9-12 attendance rate and the 9-12 graduation rate calculate into our overall district on track to graduation factors. We do K-12 attendance, right? 9-12 graduation rate, grade 3 ELA, and grade 8 math. Those factors all come into that on track to graduation. So I'm not quite sure that those 2 things would have a correlation with each other.
And then the last one that I wanted to ask about is this, similar to the same question I had asked at the last meeting, is the achievement factor. The achievement factor is significantly lower than the on track to graduation. If we're having such a low achievement and we're moving on to graduation, and you have concerns about proficiency, a decrease in proficiency, how is it that we were able to pass those kids along as graduating if they're, having those struggles?
I'm not sure the correlation between.
Well, I
scores are
look
measuring
at
two
achievement,
different-
I look at achievement, if somebody achieves, then they graduate, right? So we have 53.7 achievement. And then we have on-track graduation at 78.7. So if they're not achieving, but then graduating, am I reading some of these numbers wrong? Am I not grasping it, or?
The achievement scores look at their performance on a statewide assessment. So one shot, each year they take one test to get their performance scoring for this. And that's based upon that point system. The on-track to graduate and the graduation rate looks at how many students complete the number of credits required for graduation. And so it's a little bit different because we're looking at two different data sets.
The achievement being not even at 60 and graduation at almost 90?
This test has nothing to do with whether a student is
Graduation.
eligible to graduate.
Right.
Nothing.
Okay.
It's not factored in their school report card.
Uh-huh,
This is a school district report card
right,
based on a single test taken by almost all students,
right.
at least 95%. It has nothing to do with if I fail this test and get a 28%, I can still graduate. I could still be an honor roll student. It has nothing to do with it. There's no correlation
Yeah.
between this test from the state and whether a student can graduate or how they're achieving in school. Nothing to do with it. And it doesn't follow them into college or anywhere else.
Right.
It's just a test that they're all required to take on a single day.
Well, how come?
And that's it.
I guess that I'm curious on how come the achievement scores are that low then? If it's-
Because that's how the students, for example, 95% of the students took this test and they scored whatever X. And it's compiled and that's it. And then we move on. Tomorrow, we go back to school and do our regular testing, which has nothing to do with this test. These are separate. This test is completely separate from what we do on a day-to-day basis in school.
And I would just say, we can encourage kids to do their best on this test, but it doesn't mean anything to them.
Yeah, they don't go
All
anywhere
they're
with it.
doing is trying to potentially do their best because their teacher has asked them to, whereas a grade actually means something to them in the end. So this, I'm not saying that they don't try, but there's no incentive for them to do well in this test when you're a fifth grader, except for to please your teacher.
So, I mean, I'll just go back to it though. I mean, I get that maybe kids aren't necessarily putting forth the effort towards the test that we're administering here, but 16.8%, that's it, was the same or higher for the districts in the state. That means in comparison to all that achievement, we're at that metric in comparison to the other districts and how they.
Right, on this test.
Yeah,
And I don't know what effort students are putting in. I'm not going to get into that.
sure.
That's anything you want to make it. There are schools that encourage students to do well on this test. Who work towards this
Uh-huh.
and then likely get a higher score because they target it.
Well,
And then because they use that data, to show to their parents, to show to the community, whatever. We could perhaps do more in that respect. But realistically, this test has nothing to do really with student achievement throughout the year. Only on that single day each year that they take the test.
there's even rumors that some of the school districts had some of their students not take this test, so that the score would be reflected higher.
Schools can control what students take the test, yes.
That's part of the reason why we reference the federal accountability
Yeah.
is 95%.
But I don't know who they are, and I don't,
Right.
again, that's conjecture. I'm not going to get into that. I'm just
Yeah.
getting to the reality that this is important, to go over this,
We're just trying to.
but it's a
answer
single day
Tom's
test,
question.
not a reflection of how students are doing throughout the year. It's not a student's yearly report card or quarterly report card or anything like that.
Nice to have an internal.
And if
report card.
Jason and Pat, if I said anything wrong here, let me know, but I've gone over this since 2016, so I know pretty much what's going on.
It may be a snapshot of one day in one year, But honestly, when you look at this entire report, we're being compared to all of the public school systems in our state. And our numbers are alarming. And I know I may be stirring the pot here, but you know, we talk about celebrations, and honestly, I get really tired of that term because there's so much more to be alarmed about rather than to celebrate. I mean, it's great that we have areas that are doing better, don't get me wrong, but to just sit here and just civilly talk about this, like everything is okay, and like, oh, we have this celebration here and there. Oh my God, when I look at these numbers, I'm really disheartened by where we fall in this state as a district. And this is not just this year. We've had a steady decline for years now. And I want to know, what are we going to do about it? And I don't know, I'm sure it's a very complicated answer, and it can't be just a couple of people. It may involve people in the community, but gosh, guys, we need to turn this around. I mean, I find this to be depressing, to be really truthful. So.
I don't think anybody's, I mean,
No, but we just so simply talk about it, and we mention our celebrations, but we don't say, look, we really are concerned about
that's
this
why we
area.
talk about our celebrations, because in the bleakness, there is some light.
There is some light, I
Yeah.
agree. But you know, when we see on track to graduation, and we are in the bottom 5% of districts in the state, oh my gosh,
Yeah, that's awful.
it's
Except this
terrible.
test doesn't have anything to do with a student graduating. You know, let's.
I
let's get
understand
let's
that, but
figure that
it's
out.
still comparing us to all of the districts in
Based
the
on this
state
light,
every
based on
year,
that, right.
and there are definite trends here that are alarming. And we can't ignore this,
I don't think
which is part
anybody's,
of why we're spending the time on it.
nobody's ignoring it, Kathy. I've been bringing it up since 2016, since the test started. And the board has discussed this every year.
Yeah.
And we're not here clapping our hands and cheering for it. We never have. So, I mean, I get what you're saying. But
Yeah,
it's
wasn't
reflected in,
suggesting that we're clapping our hands.
it's reflected
but-
in what the board has said every time we've gone over this.
Yeah,
So
but it
that's not
hasn't,
unusual.
but it hasn't changed. We're still on that trend.
Right,
And somehow
right.
we need to flip this around. I don't know what that answer is, though I wish I did, but you know, maybe a digger deep into our actual school environment and what kids are struggling. I don't know. And honestly, I don't care if there's rumors out there about a couple schools who are curtailing their numbers, you know, like.
Yeah, I know.
You know, I mean, overall, it's still the entire state.
Sure.
So.
What we will do is spend time the next board meeting, specifically talking about our school goals, because our schools didn't have the report cards, but they had the data. So then they kind of assimilated and looked through that data. And so we'll talk about like what's next and what have we been doing since the beginning of the year till now, and what will we continue to do in order to address some of the deficiencies that we're looking at.
You know, I guess a question too, like, are some of these, like, maybe some of our newer curriculums just aren't working for us the way we were hoping they would? Or, you know, do we look at those kinds of things or question those? Or do we just have it like fall on the individual schools then and they have certain goals? You know, have we looked
Right.
at long-term?
Yeah, to give you a broad picture, the curriculum is an important piece. It's not the most important piece, right? Providing high quality academic instruction to our kids is the number one goal that we have. And that is hiring great people, providing great professional development, and working with them on that process. You know, we could choose to change math or reading or science or social studies curriculums. I think research would show that that wouldn't have a significant difference in how our students achieve. Our students are going to achieve based on a couple of significant factors. One, they're showing up and in the class every single day. Two, they're showing up with quality, certified, passionate educators who do a great job every single day. Look at me. Now, that's easy language. It's challenging because we have all kinds of things that we talked about at the beginning. You know, we have kids who have English as a second language. We have kids who have challenges when they come to school. We have all kinds of dynamics. That doesn't mean that our students shouldn't be learning and shouldn't be learning at a higher level than they are now. But I would just go back to the state would say that we should be a bit cautious about these scores. Remember again, April 2020, coming back from a pandemic where we had half-time school in elementary school, 2 times a week in the middle school, and A-Day, B-Day in high school, up until 3 weeks before that. that is not likely conducive to students who are going to be all out performance and give us their best every single day on this assessment. Doesn't mean that it's not important and that the trend is not in the direction we want. We should probably look at what we're doing every single day and take a look at that in our classrooms and in our environments. So in the end, right, if we said, hey, our scores increased by 5%, we still would say, and we want to increase them greater. So that's our goal moving forward, is to increase those scores in all of those academic areas. Attendance, right, those on track for graduation that we're talking about, our percentage of achievement and growth. Those are the indicators, key indicators that our schools are being working.
Colin,
So, I agree. I think we do need to look into the why. When you bring forth the longitude data to us, could I also ask that we have some knowledge as to what the previous year's goals were as well? Because you know, you obviously have talked about this at length over a span. You know, you said since 2016. So obviously there's been goals that have been put out there. It'd be interesting to see what we've been trying so that we could maybe see if there's been, if we have not tried as hard on those areas, or maybe what we're trying is not working. But I would like to see what we have tried in the past as far as our goals to take this on, because it has been a steady decline since what, 2015 probably, as far as how we perform on this test. And yeah, we do need to rectify that. I don't like our, you know, when we talk about our community and we have great schools, those are big draws for our community. And we want to have the best schools possible. And where we sit with the rest of the state, I don't find acceptable.
you could probably get those from Jason, because I know every year we go over this. Jason and Pam are asked to develop a plan towards this, so that'd be the best place to go. Ask them.
Okay, could we get that included too, please? Sure. Thank you.
I really question, like, I don't know how to start phrasing this, I guess, but, you know, we've had this downward decline, and we talk about, like, curriculum would be a small percentage. That's really, we have to engage our teachers, and that's really important. We hire the right ones and all those kinds of things. But in this era of having very few teachers and having teachers be at a premium right now, I have been told by universities that the people who are going into education right now are the cream of the crop because of the people who are the most passionate and really want to be educators, especially given like the environment around teaching, what's been happening, and the pay and all that kind of stuff in general. So to me, when I start seeing things like this, I question more of the environmental factors in their education process outside of school and what's happening. I guess I'd like to see, I don't know how in the world we would do it, but I'd like to see us looking into more of what's happening within our community with like home life and again, we talked about, family incomes and those kinds of things and diversity, like what's happening outside and what kind of factors outside of school may be playing into what's happening within school. Like you mentioned before, the Asian kids, they're always there, right? Now, this is a generalization, so don't bite my head off for this one, but culturally in the Asian countries, education is extremely important. And I think probably home life, I'm just guessing, it pushes that, right? To make sure that those kids are in school. But maybe there are certain areas that, whether it be geographical areas or.
Chris, there's not much we can do about that, Kevin. I mean, we can't say, get a better damn family. I mean, you know.
Right, but then.
We can't, I mean, I as you're talking, I'm thinking, well, what if
Right.
we really do this, do a real sociological.
It's a great discussion, but it's out of our control.
I know.
Well,
Yeah, I was gonna say, if
I'll
we
give
find
you a
out that
number. I'll give you a
Manitowoc
number.
just doesn't
Just-
have the mix.
I'll give you a number.
To allow for,
Since 2010, the number of children in foster care in Manitowoc County has increased by 300%.
Which I'm sure is part of the problem, right? But
And I got no control over that. Neither does
Yeah.
anybody here.
exactly.
Nothing we can do about that.
But can we start maybe a mentorship program or start bringing community members back into our school? For years, we've gotten away from doing those kinds of things and having, retired teachers or just people who really care and want to make a difference come in alongside some of those students to help walk them through or to make sure they show up. I mean, we really did, like, especially because of 9/11, right? We really kind of got away from having a lot of people from the public within our schools. But maybe with some background checks and those kinds of things, we should start encouraging more of that. It's kind of like almost like the school's version of a CASA program, right? But something alongside that order. Throwing that out there because I think the community factor is definitely one to think about. And what we do within our schools, to me, it's bringing people in and getting them involved.
Yeah, we're one of the poorest funded school systems in the state too. So that has to factor in.
Right.
And we have a very high level of economic disadvantage,
Again, it's a good discussion, but
yeah.
nothing we can do about this stuff. So let's,
Well,
and I get it, but
so I think maybe expectations that we're gonna be hitting home runs all the time are pretty unrealistic. But, we certainly need to have a plan.
well, that's Jason and Pam, our superintendent. So I think they heard you.
Yeah,
All right, let's move on.
we'll have this discussion. That's all.
Well, we could have this all day.
Yeah, sure.
Would there be a better time to have some of the discussion then? I mean, I get it, you don't want to have it at general meeting, but would there be a better time to have a discussion as to, I mean, it is a very big thing, the community does care about it a lot. Would there be a better opportunity to bring this up and have this specifically maybe deep dived into?
Well, during the summer, when we have our open meeting, is a time when we discuss these types of issues. We had a meeting like that.
Yeah, and I chose not to attend.
You skipped out intentionally.
You're right, the reason, and I chose not to attend because of the.
Regardless of your reason, Colin, you intentionally skipped out of a meeting, which
Yes.
Right,
And I can tell you why.
I
And
don't,
I expressed that to the entire
your
board.
reason why is insufficient. You intentionally skipped out of a meeting.
And
If I were your employer, you could get fired for that, but I
Not
can't
if
do
it's
that.
illegal?
I'm not allowed to do that.
I had a significant concern.
Yeah, let's not even.
Okay, wait.
let's not
Irrelevant,
even-
irrelevant.
Wait, guys,
But anyways, that
we
was an
can't wait
opportunity to
till
do that,
summer
so
to address
we
this.
do have
Sure.
this. So,
I think the most appropriate place is at the curriculum meeting, and everybody can attend that, and I think that.
everybody has input, on the board.
Great.
That's a good.
So I think
suggestion.
that's the
Yeah.
that's the best place for it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm glad there's a deep concern, okay?
Oh,
There has been all
could there
along.
not be?
That shouldn't change, right? We should all be concerned with it. We should want to be we should want to be where Arrowhead is, right?
Sure.
Of course, they got a lot more money than we do, but regardless. Meredith,
I think we're sitting here solving problems for the last 15 minutes when we haven't even heard what the building plans are yet or how it's going to be addressed. And so
Yeah,
I
you're
think
right.
if we're putting the cart before the horse, and let's allow that to flesh out on the 14th before we jump in and try to be
I agree.
problem solvers.
okay, yeah, so let's move on. D, designate equity Title IX coordinator, and that would be you. What is that?
Yep, so each year, we ask the board to identify individual who would represent our district if there was someone who brought forward something in regards to equity or Title IX. Pam Lensmeyer has served in that role, part of our board policy since 2018, I think. So it's just an annual requirement that we must identify an individual.
Do we have to vote on it?
Any questions on that? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion and a second to designate Pam Lensmeyer as our equity Title IX coordinator.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, then we'll move on to unfinished business.
All right.
And I'll turn it over to you, Kerry, because these are
Okay.
you want to
Okay,
use on the
let's see
agenda?
if we can do this fast. So I did write up a motion here, or a possible sort of Chinese menu motion. Yeah, would each one, would you take that? We didn't actually have a meeting on this, but we did have a meeting of minds. And, I did write a statement saying, we need to vote on this. We need to vote on this program up and down, up or down. but there's also an opportunity to do some amendment to what appears to be sort of the plan now. And here's what I have. Participation in the plan developed by the Manitowoc Public School District Administration pertaining to 12 of the district core teachers currently teaching at the middle school level. Maybe there should be a comment there. With a single license, relevant to the goal of each acquiring a second license in an additional core area. That's what the plan is. And we could simply vote and say that the board approves of that plan. As it now is it's now described in the documents that we looked at in the past. Okay? Or we could amend it or by adding participation in the plan developed by shall be voluntary by each of those concerned teachers. That could be one amendment, or shall not be required by any of those teachers with 20 or more years of service to the Manitowoc Public School District unless voluntarily agreed to. That's the grandfather clauses. One just concerns a small group, that is the ones with 20 years or more service, or it's voluntary for everybody in the 12. Okay? And then after we deal with that, the participation in the plan developed by the Manitowoc Public School District will require a clear statement of expectations pertaining to obtaining the second license and the time limit for obtaining such a license to be included in each of the contracts, with each of their contracts with the district.
So what's your motion?
So my motion is that that we approve the plan developed.
The first paragraph?
Yep, the first paragraph.
Alright.
That we approve, and that could be the major motion, and then there could be amendments to it.
Well, you can include any of those issues you have in the original motion.
Well, I'll just
That makes it
say,
a lot that just makes it a lot
I will
easier.
just say, you know, I know it, okay. Well, but it seems to me that we have to have a vote on.
Well, first
on
you have
including
to,
these,
first
so
you
that-
have to present the motion and there has to be a second.
Right,
I'm just suggesting you added certain adjustments to it. You
right,
can
because they were
include
discussed at the last
can
meeting.
include
They
any-
came up in the last.
any of
meeting.
those in the original motion. That would eliminate having to modify it if everybody was comfortable with it.
Okay.
It's up to you. You want to make a
But if
motion?
we get a motion on the floor, the motion on the floor would be that we approve the participation in the plan developed by, et cetera, okay? So the motion would be,
So you just want the first paragraph to be a motion?
the first paragraph to be a motion that the board can approve or not approve.
Just that if you already want to amend it, why not just make that part of the original motion?
Well, because you have to have a motion
Right,
on the floor first, and then people can say, well, I'd like to amend it.
but if you do the right motion right away, then we're done. You see?
No.
Yes.
I mean, you don't,
Yes.
no.
You don't, you
I
should
don't
not
think
make,
that-
Carrie, you shouldn't make a motion so they can be amended. You should make a motion so they can be passed. And then if someone's not comfortable with it or feels they want to amend it, that's why you amend it.
But it's much more efficient to have the motion. And if
Right.
somebody wants to amend it, then we vote on the amendment, and if we vote it down.
I know,
Okay, what matters?
somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve
Wait,
the
go ahead.
first little paragraph, on the page.
Okay,
Just the first paragraph?
Yes.
yeah,
Who wants to second that?
I'll second it. I thought I made that motion.
Any discussion?
I have
Yes.
a question.
Go, Colin, well, you actually made the motion, so you can go first.
Okay, so, Joyce, if this goes through with, requiring the second license, is there a time when a single license holder who chooses not to get the second license would be changed from potentially a 1 FTE position to a less than 1 position? due to not seeking the second license.
Well, I think I understand your question, the potential risk really for any of these is that, the goal is that our middle school teachers, are certified, and have to teach two subjects moving forward. For all the reasons we talked about, Lance talked at the last meeting, at personnel committee meeting, why. If one of those 12 or any of those 12 would choose not to do that, which they have that choice, like they're just not going to do it. They could choose, and some have already, choose to apply and move up to the high school. We had at least 2 people do that this summer from what that would have been in the same situation. But if they just choose to do nothing, of all the choices they have and just choose to do nothing, that teacher really puts themselves at risk of either being displaced and moved by us, or that there just isn't a position for them. So,
So the model could not entertain a science teacher, a math teacher, and combined ELA, social studies teacher. We would not.
we still don't have.
Because then we got less kids in each section, and so we could either be teaching the 10 kids in a classroom, whereas other people are teaching the 26, or that FTE count potentially goes down, or the position is eliminated because it's not a dual certified position. I guess that's where I'm headed. So it does put them in jeopardy.
It could potentially.
But that's not our business, is it?
Right, but it is a factor in making.
It's a factor,
decision.
sure.
Colin, you had a,
Yeah.
Colin was next.
I won't support that first paragraph. The only way I'd support it is if it would be volunteer for those concerns teachers. I'm not about to. I think that if a teacher has been teaching here, we hired them to do their job. Requiring them to bring on another license and if they're not on board with that, they're just going to look elsewhere. And I don't want to go down that route. If that's our expectation moving forward, then so be it. But I think that it's not doing, it sends the wrong message if we're going to be adding a requirement for license for people that are already currently here.
Kathy.
Yeah, I have a couple comments, and I'm probably repeating some of them that I made the last time. But first of all, saying that our teachers are putting themselves at risk, they're not putting themselves at risk. We're putting them at risk because we're making the choice to make them go and have a second license. So they have chosen 20 plus years ago not to do that and have taught in this district, most of them, all that time. And so we're the ones doing that then, not themselves. So again, I repeat, if you want to have a 2-person house until the time is necessary, I don't understand why we can't have even one 4-person house at both Washington and Wilson to be able to accommodate those teachers who have been here for 20 plus years.
Kathy, that would be taken care of by either of the first sub-sentences. We follow, still be voluntary for all concerned. We could go to that. Okay.
We have a motion on the floor.
I know, but we can make it as a.
Kathy is discussing the motion on the floor, and that's what we have to discuss.
Oh, okay.
You can't discuss
But you
amendments if
can't
you don't have
do
them.
that stuff unless you amend the motion.
Right, but we're talking about the first one.
Right, that's what she's
Yeah,
on, so that's where we're at.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Anything else we want to do? Anybody else on the motion?
Well, and I have more than that,
Okay,
but
go
I just kind of lost some of my train of thinking.
Go ahead.
Carrie talking. The other part of this is that we've talked for months and months and months about how much we're taxing our administrators and our teachers with the time that it takes to teach. They're stressed out. And now we're talking about adding on a second degree for them. So they're going to teach here. And then they're going to be going to school so that they can teach 2 different subjects. They have an expertise in an area that they've been teaching for 20 plus years. I mean, I would rather, if I had kids in this district, I would want the 20+ year math teacher teaching my child and not going to them for science too, that they just picked up, because that's not their passion. I mean, if someone who wants to like become a science teacher, that's a whole different thing, right? To teach the 2 subject areas, but they're not going to be as good at that. They're not going to be excited about that. And they're not going to put the time and attention that it takes into teaching that area that they would with just their one passionate area that they're really good at. And that's realism. I mean, I'd love to say that every single one of our teachers would give 100%. I mean, I think they would give 100% to each area. But at the same time, they're always going to be drawn to one subject matter more than the other, because that's what they chose.
Anybody else want to add anything, Stacy?
When do we get to make an amendment?
You can make amendment at any
You're gonna
time
make an
now.
amendment right now.
There's a couple of things we can do. We can either pass this motion or reject it, which would then eliminate it. Then at the next meeting, for example, someone could bring up the issue again. So this could keep coming back if we rejected it.
Sure, I'd like to make an amendment
If-
at this time.
But that, you can do that. Yeah, go ahead.
I would like to make an amendment that, going forward, that this, the Manitowoc School District Administration pertaining to, any teachers that are in the single license, that'll be a voluntary, acceptance by the teachers that we have. So it's not 12 anymore. I think now we're at 11. We might even be at 10.
So it's pretty much the first addition here that Carrie had on here, shall be voluntary for each of those, right?
Yes.
Pretty much that's it.
Yes.
We need a second to that.
I'll second.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the motion again?
Okay, well, it's the original motion.
Mhm.
We're talking about an amendment here.
Participation
And I'll
in the
just
plan.
summarize it,
Okay.
Stacy, if that's okay.
That'd
It
be
shall be
great.
voluntary for each of those concerned teachers.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the best wording, but I think that fits what we're looking at here. That's what Stacy's coming up with, right, Stacy?
Yes.
Okay.
Can we add the term though currently, because we don't want to make this like,
Well, that's why I'm asking. I don't know if that's the best language to use.
right?
Well, it already says in here, 12 of the district's core teachers currently teaching at the middle school level.
So it does, yeah, it does
Right,
reflect,
you're
it
right.
does
Yeah.
address those. Okay, so anybody want to second that first before we do?
Yeah, second.
Oh, you did already? Okay,
Yeah.
good. Good. Okay, now we can have discussion on the amendment. Colin.
Full support of that. I think that this appears to be then, appealing to those teachers that just don't want to do it. And it gives, the, support to the direction that the district wants to head. So I'm in favor of that. I think that that's the right way to go. If the administration wants to seek dual licensing, there's rhyme and reason behind it. But the big thing is that the teachers that just don't want to move that direction, I think it meets their needs. So
Harry.
I'm in favor of that too, and I think the teachers that don't volunteer to do it are kind of, are throwing their fate to the wind, and that's their business. So I don't think there's any tenure in this system. So that if it's voluntary and somebody says, well, I'm not gonna volunteer to do this, and you say, okay. And then when the enrollments go down, it's like, well, nothing we can do for you. There's no place where we can use you. I mean, we're overstocked and people that just teach math.
Well,
So-
clearly being dual licensed could open up more opportunities for that individual.
Absolutely it could.
That's
So I'm
choice
saying
they
I'm in
need to make.
favor
It's
of
like-
it. I'm in favor of
It's
the,
like getting a master's license or whatever, right? You don't have to.
I'm in favor of the plan and I'm in favor to make it voluntary. And for no special consideration being given to people who don't want to volunteer.
Anybody else want to,
Do we have a loophole on this? Like, I'm questioning what you're saying now, Carrie. Like, so we're saying they have to voluntarily agree to it, but then if they don't, that we're just gonna let them go? Is that where you're going?
Well, it depends on what the circumstances
No, I don't think
are. I
Carrie
mean,
said
nobody's
that.
got
No,
a
that's what I
lifetime
hear too.
guarantee.
That's what I'm hearing from you,
Yeah,
Carrie. Okay,
exactly right.
Stacy is in agreement with me. I mean, I'm hearing like you're saying, if they don't voluntarily agree to do this, then they're kind of, well, see ya, we'll figure out something else, or you figure out something else.
Yes. 'Cause
No,
this
I'm
is-
not okay with that.
This is the, okay. And it's Stacy,
Absolutely
you're
not.
not either.
This is about protecting those 12 people so that they don't have to go forward and do the dual licensure,
It's
so
not-
that they can be
it's not what it's
grandfathered
about.
in.
But I don't think we can guarantee
How can we do
that
that?
there would be enough kids in the
Yeah,
classroom.
yeah. When you
to
suggest
continue a
protecting,
full-time-
we're not putting them into a bubble here and saying, because it's only voluntary, we can never make any changes to your
Yeah,
status.
right.
That's not true.
Even if you're tenured, I mean, university professors,
All teachers
teaching
are always at
classes,
risk of being,
and there's no
and I said
students
that
to
before.
teach.
completely
It
different
is not a
system.
completely
Behaviors
different
are
thing.
Yeah.
You guys are, like, you guys are saying, if somebody is looking at this right now, here and now, you either make a decision to go 2 license or 1 license,
Right.
and if you don't decide to go, you know what, we might have you go off to the wayside. That's what I think they're trying to solve here. Give the option. People can be a master of their own destiny in this, go that route. That I think it's 2 people, I think you're saying, you would like and maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, I'm just trying to
I don't think
understand.
you are. I think you're right.
But those teachers that are wanting to do the 2 license, they have the destiny to move forward in whatever meeting the needs of the employment is.
Right, with the
All right,
support of
and
the
that's
school
why it's
system.
voluntary.
Yeah.
But if you can't force somebody to either volunteer to do this or worse, skedaddling you. That I think is not,
Oh,
it
yeah.
sends the different message.
Oh, I don't think that's,
That's
what-
where-
I don't think
that's
that's what's
how-
happening, but, you know,
Okay.
things don't stay static all the
That's,
time.
that's how I
Things
was reading
change.
it, Carrie.
Right, and I guess the only thing I would say is, this has been presented already, it's voluntary. Right, it's already voluntary,
Yeah,
so
sure.
the idea is that, the sentiment of the motion is to have these people protected. And not that, because it's already voluntary, but they've been told that if they don't come on board, we might not have a position for you. So this motion, obviously, the way it's being looked at is not, it's not doing what we want it to do.
Well, maybe not what you wanted to do.
Well, I made the motion, so.
I know.
So I'm gonna rescind the motion and, I'm going to make a new motion,
Or amendment.
an amendment to my motion, that it'll be voluntary. And those teachers that choose to not get a dual license, every effort will be made to keep them in the district.
How's that gonna happen?
But can I maybe make a?
Well, I think that, I mean, one of the things that we're gonna have to do with this is bird dog it. We're gonna have to look at these 11 individuals and follow through the process every time that they want to, the district wants to get rid of one of these people because they are not having they don't have the dual enrollment. So we're just gonna have to keep an eye on this and make sure that that's not happening.
Well, let's get a second on it before we go any further. Anybody want a second?
Second.
Okay, go ahead.
So I just want to kind of give a paint picture. I think you guys are having a great discussion. When we hire teachers, we give them a contract that says where you're certified and qualified. We don't say you're teaching 8th grade math or 7th grade science. And that is really critical for the district to be able to have to do that. We also have a reduction in force policy, and that's part of our handbook that says that if an employee who has a license and we don't have a position for them, there is a process for them to remain in the district based on a number of different factors: licensure, their experience and longevity in the district, previous performances, etc. So I just would want to make it clear that there would be no interest at all for the administration to remove people because they have a single license. That's not what we're trying to accomplish. You're like not trying to push anybody out. But likely what will happen, just to paint the picture, is if there's an employee who has a single licensure, they will be what we call involuntarily transferred to another place of which they're licensed. Likely meaning somebody else is going to be moved from that is either less qualified or at least senior. That's how the system works for people. So although there is a tenure, there's a reduction in force policy that will look at those pieces. The example that I give you on a regular basis is, if I teach fifth grade at Monroe, there is no guarantee that I'm teaching fifth grade next year. I might teach fourth grade or third grade, depending on where the student model is. That happens every single year in every single building. So as much as I want to be able to protect individual educators, it is not the district's, it's not in the interest of the district to be able to create a policy that protects any individuals from the district being able to move them to where they're certified to meet the needs of the kids. So the language is like what Stacy was saying, in the extent possible, we surely, to every extent possible, will offer every employee in these groups positions of which they're licensed and certified. We just want to be cautious about saying how we go about doing it, because then we guarantee somebody employment of which wouldn't follow our policy. So you just gotta be thoughtful of that.
The example that you always give though is always elementary about moving, and that does not pertain in this area. We're talking about middle school and high school, and elementary is very different. And people in elementary know that that happens. I mean, that's been going on
Right,
forever.
but it happens in
So it's
middle
very
school too.
different.
Someone could be teaching seventh grade and we ask them to teach eighth grade next year. Someone could teach sixth grade, we have them teach eighth grade next year. That happens within our system,
But not the topic,
not the topic, meaning.
not the license. So if there's science, they're gonna go to seventh grade
Science,
science, eighth grade
correct.
science. They're
Yes.
not gonna go to social studies.
Correct.
And I'll just say I'm not going to support the amendment because I'm not going to support something that will only protect a certain group of individuals and not all the rest. I think that's what this is. That's what the amendment does. It says this group of 12 or 11 has extra protection that other teachers don't have. And so I would hope there was a better way to do it. I would have supported the first amendment because I like the voluntary component, but I don't like the idea of adding on protection that's not available to anyone else. Simply because they choose not to, become a dual license or whatever. Where by making it voluntary, they don't have to be anyways.
Do we have, you're saying, I mean, I guess I was under the impression that there was only 12 people in that middle school that have the single
I
license.
think that's what we're talking about here is 12.
Right, so then,
teachers,
so
yeah.
would it would, I mean, you would only be affecting, because currently we would control that hiring model for those to do the dual licensure from moving forward, correct? So
Yeah,
you would only be
exactly.
talking about those
Yeah.
individuals you already currently have.
Right, I don't want to give them special protection, additional protection that others don't have. By saying, because they choose not to get their dual license, that we can't change their status. And that's what the amendment does.
I have a hard time with that. These are people who have committed 20 plus years to education, most of them solely here in Manitowoc. They have raised their families here, they're grounded here, and we're not gonna try to stand behind them to stay here. You're talking about people who are in their 40s and 50s going out and getting another degree. It's like saying, Joyce, I want you to go be a financial person now and do your job at the same time. How are you gonna do both of those really, really well? Plus, you gotta go to school to do it. I mean, that's really over the top. Hiring people with dual licensure totally makes sense to me. And we're not saying like this is all gonna happen tomorrow. We're talking about working into that model because we're losing people, right? It's not like it's tomorrow, it's all gonna take place. So why, again, can't we have it be like a voluntary system where we have 4-person houses for a while until this all sorts through and you have people only with dual licensure left and have your 2-person houses? I don't understand why that can't happen.
The best way to solve this is to reject this all and have it come back to either curriculum or personnel or to administration and have a better plan presented to the board rather than this, because I don't think we're getting anywhere here. We're kind of getting mixed up in semantics here at times, and
I gotta change it.
that's why then let's just.
It's not semantics though.
Go ahead, Colin.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the focus is the license, all right? Now, if we were to just make it so that, and I hear that we want to protect the individual that has the single license, their ability to be employed and, still be master of their own destiny, whether to pursue or not pursue. But yet we want to keep it equal. Could we make it so simply so that there would, and we currently have it as a voluntary anyways. And so the spirit of this is pretty much to to kind of set at ease some of the disruptiveness. So if we could maybe set at ease some of that disruptiveness of that, an employment would not be based on being a single licensure or non-single licensure. That's it. Rather than delve into the semantics of, you know, who it applies to, it would just be simply on the license. Would that be acceptable?
Go ahead, I'll let Carrie speak first.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm coming at this from a very different perspective on that, in that, I mean, I spent a career in education and know what the realities are. My thought is that the board should be looking to the well-being of the school system. Should be looking to the well-being of the school system, which of course is not a static thing. And enrollments have gone down every year. The curriculum has changed, you know, significantly, I think, since Jason and Pam came in. And it's like, gosh, you know, we don't have any tenure here. And it's like everybody that works in the American economy. I mean, I knew people, you know, that had put 30 years in and had gotten laid off and never got to work again. Well, you know, it'd be nice to protect them, but the reality of the circumstances are the reality. And I thought that if we approved of the program, the plan, which really offers an opportunity to teachers. I mean, to speak personally about this, I got a job in Manitowoc because I was willing to teach 3 preps. I was qualified to do so, but you know, most people didn't do that much. I taught political science and history. And it was an opportunity for me to have a job and to have a career, which might not otherwise have happened. And yeah, sure, I would have liked to have just taught history, but the fact of the matter is that until we got a larger student enrollment, that wasn't a possibility. So, you know, so I wanted to do that. In this case, it's like, look, the situation is that the enrollment may go down, and the program that we have in the middle schools, you know, it would be better if we had everybody there in the core able to teach in more than one subject. That's the reality. And if that doesn't happen, you know, when enrollment goes down further, gosh, I don't know, you're going to have to change. You might have to go to the high school, or you might have to, you know, try to get a job in Denmark or something like that. I mean, the town Denmark. So I thought that, holy gee, it's, you know, if we made it voluntary, people could choose, they could take their chances. They could say, well, yeah, maybe I've got 20 years in now, you know, maybe enrollments won't go down and et cetera. But it seems to me that the school system is offering an opportunity to these people to make the adjustment that protects them better in the future. If they don't want to do that, that's their business. And the program, I think, addresses the well-being of the system. And I don't think that we can like make special rules for individual people. I think what Dave says is I don't think we can offer guarantees or protections for a special group of people. I mean, I know we don't have unions anymore and master contracts, et cetera, but I still think that, you know, playing favorites is just not something I would be in favor.
Well, it's interesting that you say, like, you wish you could have protected your friend who was at a company for 20, 30 years, but you
I didn't
can't.
say that. I didn't say
Right?
that. I said that was the reality.
Oh, reality, okay. But it doesn't have to be our reality. And I
It's the
still,
reality of education these days. It's not isolated to Manitowoc, it is not isolated to K-12. This is the new reality of education in trying to serve the demographics in the population that are given to us.
but it doesn't need to be a hard line though, Meredith. So we don't need to say it, you know, 22, 23, you all have to be dual licensure,
I think as an
right? Like,
administrator, you almost have to, because we have no guarantees of population of students in the classroom. We don't have that guarantee. What we do have a guarantee of is We can put you in a position where your license and your education lies if we have a position where your certification lies.
I still think for the greater good though, I'd rather have a math teacher teaching math than math and science. If I was that parent and our enrollment has gone down like what, by 50 kids, 75 kids? That's all over 10 schools.
So I think we can make a hard decision today, or we'll make a hard decision down the road. Either way, the hard decision will come, is my understanding.
And see, and I think it'll just be phased out
It
as we
might.
hire more
Right.
people.
It might.
It's a
If the
transition.
requirement is duly enrolled, that's the best thing for the future, that we would do that. Yeah, I'll also say that, you know, we just got done hearing a report that, and the superintendent just told us that the best thing is to have great teachers. And we are doing whatever we can to dissuade these teachers that have been in our district to leave because of the, I'm gonna call it a threat. Whether we're presenting that or not, that's what's happening. And I don't see, I totally agree with you. I don't think that we guarantee you a position, and that's why we have contracts from year to year. But the way that this is being rolled out and it's presented has already gotten us to lose good teachers. And I think if I'm wrong, we breezed through the personnel thing the other day. Our 20+ year teacher, 22 years she'd been with us, and we hired what, an English teacher to teach math?
So can we have the vote?
Yeah,
Yeah, we have a motion on the.
yeah, we
floor.
got an amendment. First, we got an amendment. We got to
Okay.
vote on the amendment, and
So what is the amendment?
the amendment is essentially that, the
I'm
first
actually gonna-
paragraph is in
I
place.
would actually rescind the amendment because I don't think that
So we're back to the original motion.
correct.
And I'm just gonna vote no because I think this needs to come back. I don't think I don't think we have,
But we can't move on
What we
until we
need.
have the vote.
yeah,
So we have a motion on the floor.
if we vote in favor of it, then that's gonna be what's in place. If we vote no, we can come back next meeting, back with something better. I don't think this is good enough for me to support it,
Okay.
especially based on the discussion we have from everybody.
Well, then you have to vote no.
It's all
on
over the
motion.
place. Well, I don't know. Okay, I'm gonna ask for a vote. All in favor of the motion? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No.
No.
Okay,
Okay.
motion fails.
All right.
Good.
So the second thing is, the outside vendor for exit surveys. I would just suggest that we put that up for a straight up or down vote. And then get it off the docket.
Okay. What is it here? What is the motion?
That the school board, the Manitowoc Public School Board, will hire an outside vendor to handle the exit surveys of people resigning or retiring.
Okay.
Okay?
Do we have a second for that?
One second. Wait, for the discussion, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can, seconding it
Just
doesn't.
say second,
lock you
second
into it.
discussion.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want when we vote. Okay, discussion. Carrie, you made the motion, so anything you wanna bring up?
I made the motion in the affirmative, as you should make motions, I guess. I'd vote against it. I think that the present system is fine. I think it's working okay. I mean, there's some concern. The committee itself thought it wasn't a major issue, but it's been brought up as an issue. So if the board decides that it would be better to have an outside vendor do this, I can tell you what the cost was, like $1,500 a year to have that done. And
You're asking us to reject your motion, okay.
well,
So we can talk about it.
I just said I made the.
I get it. I mean, anybody else want to add?
Yeah,
things to
of
this?
course I
Go ahead,
do.
Kathy.
I guess one of the suggestions that I'd like to make is that, let's try it. We do all of our data based on 3 years all the time, whether we get it from state or even in-house. We based on 3 years. What if we did this as a pilot program for the next 3 years to see what kind of data we receive? And if it's very different from the stuff when we do it in-house. And at that time, so say in 2024, be 3 school years from now, it would be readdressed and reassessed whether or not we want to keep it. But it would give us a 3-year testing time to see, I call it a pilot program, to see whether or not it really is helpful to us or not. That way the costs stay down minimally and it can be addressed in those 2 years again, without it just you don't want it to just keep continuing if it's not doing what we want it to do.
Do you want us to make a friendly amendment to the motion? And
Well,
say that,
There's no such thing as a friendly amendment.
Sure.
So, that's a term that really is misused. You can amend the motion,
Yes.
whether it's friendly or unfriendly. It has nothing to do with it. There's no such
then we
thing.
vote on the amendment.
Well, we have the regular motion. If you want to make an amendment, you can. If you want to add that to it, that would be an amendment.
Probably will, but Stacy wants to say something first.
Well, you have the floor.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I'd like to make an amendment that we include schools' perceptions for our third-party surveys, exit surveys, and that it would be a pilot program that which would end in 2024 to be readdressed at that time.
Stacey, did you want to?
I just wanted to, my concern would be is if school perceptions or the district is going to give us only certain information about the exit interviews. I think the biggest issue that's been on the table is the comments. And, Joyce, I don't know, will school perceptions give us the comments when we get the report?
That really won't.
Okay, so it's
that
not
really
gonna,
won't change. I mean,
so that's not gonna
Yeah.
change anything, so, I guess I wouldn't support it moving to that, because I still don't think that we're gonna get the information that we need.
It did say
So
though,
was anybody going to second the amendment?
Oh, sorry.
Anybody want to second it? No, I like to
Second for
speak. because
discussion.
you were-
Second for discussion.
they did say in the
Okay.
school perceptions that they would analyze the comments and give us any common threads that whether they were positive or negative. So we would receive information about the commentary, just not the individual comments, because that would still remain anonymous.
Is that your
Which doesn't really
understanding?
help us a lot.
it's no different than we're doing now.
Okay.
I mean.
But
when-
I don't think you've ever reported to us what the commonality has been for comments.
I think
We've had categories
Trends-
of
trends on-
relocating, health issues. I mean, it's been, we've had those percentages.
Anybody else to the amendment? Colin?
So when we do the exit interview, incorporate that third party, they provide comments, et cetera. Is there a way to get some of that, exit interview in a certain time frame? Like if we do on a monthly basis, sometimes so we can kind of get a picture of maybe see where our exits, because we have a considerable amount of people that do retire and things like that. Could we get that on a monthly basis from this company so that we can just, keep track of what's the common trends going on in our district, et cetera?
Seems to me if there's any information, you're going to get it wherever the source is regardless. So doesn't matter who's doing it.
So you could get the same service.
I don't see why not. I threw this, I'll throw Carrie under the bus here, but I've suggested this go through personnel and years ago already I don't know, a couple of years ago, right, Kathy? And I don't know what's happened with it, but here we are. The only solution we come up with is looking at a third-party vendor. So I don't see the third-party vendor as changing anything that we currently have.
I
I
think it
just
would
don't see it
offer
at
full
all.
disclosure from.
I don't see that happening. In my experience in other places, that hasn't occurred. So.
Which is part of why I
Why is that
suggest the
throwing
pilot program, for us to try it.
Well, because it's another thing you got to deal with on personnel.
Oh,
Sorry, Carrie.
I like the idea of a pilot program because, sometimes we can all be surprised at how good things do or don't work out. So it's giving an opportunity to try something different. And if, we need to try something different to kind of get off of what we're currently, so let's give it a shot. It is a small, it could be, doesn't have to be for even 3 years, maybe just a year or 2 years, just to kind of see how in comparison it operates versus what we currently are doing. I see that as a win if we're trying something new and trying to think outside the box. So I like that idea.
Anybody else? Okay, The amendment is on the floor to have, well, the motion is to go to a third party, and the third party would be the one that you discussed, or whatever they're called.
For 3 years.
For 3 years.
The amendment was for 3
Amendment,
years,
yeah.
but you can amend it further to 2, 1.
Well,
You
first
would
we got to
have to,
vote on
you'd have to
it.
rescind
We
it.
can't amend it
You'd
again.
have to Put forward your amendment.
So all in favor of the amendment, say aye. Who's in favor of the amendment? Anybody?
I guess I would have to rescind my amendment then.
We're just talking about the
Oh,
time
no.
frame.
Yeah, the
Let's
timeframe,
just
so I'm
do
going to
this.
3 years to
Just
try
vote
it.
it so we
Let's just vote on it. I'm not
Let's
gonna
just vote
allow
on
you
it,
to rescind
jeez.
it. You've got an amendment on the floor, it's been seconded, we're gonna vote on it. You can just deny it and go to a different amendment if you want.
We'll vote
We're
on
getting
that.
hung up here on these motions and amendments, guys. Let's,
I think we're getting.
Try to do it
confused by
right.
that, that's why.
so all in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No.
No,
Okay, we're back to the original motion.
Okay.
If anybody wants to make an amendment, they can do that.
Yes, I'd like to,
Go ahead, Colin.
I'd like to mirror the previous amendment, place it at sunset time of 1 year.
And we need a second to that.
Second,
Any further discussion on that? Okay, the amendment is to go with school perceptions, right? That's the place, and do it for 1 year.
right?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No.
No,
How many voted no? Okay, so it passes 4-3, so we're back to the original motion as amended, which is to go to a third party. The third party would be school perceptions, and then they would do it for 1 year.
1 year?
Any further discussion on that?
No, that's it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Okay, motion passes 5-2. Okay, and let's move on to the
Oh,
next
no.
item.
I think I voted the problem, but never mind, never mind.
so.
Well, it's too late now. You had your
I
chance.
know. God.
Dave,
Um,
so it passed going third party for 1 year.
For 1
Yeah,
year,
yeah.
5-2, yeah.
Thank you.
And then we have new business, so that'll go over to Meredith. You have a number of,
Yep, so, you have in board book a, significant number of new courses. Some of them are, name change only, which you'll see, noted in the agenda. All of these courses, with the exception of one, were unanimously approved to come to the board. So I think, let me just walk through them, and then what I'd like to do is to take 2 votes. So running through the business and technology courses, those are, the ones that are not designated as name change are new. Many of them are to fall in line with College Here and Now, which is a way for students to earn dual credit, earning high school credit as well as college credit. So those will align there. The culinary course is a new course. Is a new course that is combining a couple of things and really giving students more of an advanced look at the culinary arts. Earth and Space is a combination of a couple of courses that they took the best of the best out of those classes and put them in one, partially to increase the enrollments instead of spreading them out. They want to be able to harness the information and the materials together. Skipping down, the special education courses are essentially a name change only to make sure that those are categorized correctly within special education instead of the streamlined career prep area. But all of those courses actually already exist and will just be taught to that population. And then the tech ed courses, there was a little bit of realignment to make sure that students have the opportunity to take those, taking them down to a semester-long class instead of a full year class in some of the cases. That's a high-level overview. Again, you'll see the descriptions below. But what I'd like to do is to vote on the categories 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6 together. And again, those were all unanimously approved by the curriculum committee yesterday. So that's vote number 1.
Okay, that was approved at the committee level, so we're at discussion. Any discussion on those? 1, 2,
3, 5,
3,
and 6.
5, and 6. Okay.
I had a question as to the sale program. What is that one? If you could elaborate a little bit on that.
So scroll down.
I
to
looked
the
into
proposal.
it and I was not grasping what it was, they were actually
Can
doing
you
there.
all shed any light on that? I'm sorry.
SAIL is a program that Lincoln High School has that serves students with special education needs who need a more alternative approach to their courses than others. They typically spend a larger portion of their day in special education focused courses directed to the work that they do, both in line with the state standards and what is on their IEPs.
And it says here that's just a name change. So we're only voting to change the name, not to.
Correct.
So the question that I had is to, earlier in the year, we had nixed the LAP program. How similar is the LAP program to this?
I can talk a little bit about some.
Although that really has nothing to do with the motion here.
Well, I mean, I could just say I'm not in favor of this if I don't understand what it
It's
is.
a name change.
Yeah,
It's just a name change. So the program is here, it'll stay here. We're just changing the name.
is it LAP? I mean, can I just ask a question?
Was that the name of it?
I mean.
We're just talking about a name change. If you want to discuss that,
I'll just vote no.
give her a call later and ask her what it is. But we're just looking at changing a name here.
Sure.
Not discussing the curriculum itself. So. Okay, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay.
No.
So you oppose the name change?
I'm just opposing. I tried to find out. I'm not voting for something I don't know about.
You have the opportunity to find that out.
Thank you.
All right, then you wanted to vote on number 4?
Yep, so number 4 was not unanimously approved by the curriculum committee. There was more information that was requested. And so that information went into board book last night to flesh that out. That is the class called America the Musical. The intent of this class is to take an extensive list of music, analyzing it and discussing American history as the music has portrayed. And so you'll see in that course proposal, the addition of a scope and sequence in addition to all the standards that would be presented in that course. You see a list of the assessments that would be integrated in there. And I believe there is a listing of some of the lyrics as well as the potential listing of the playlist is what it's being called.
Okay, that we're in the discussion area because that's already been approved by the committee.
Yeah.
So any discussion on social studies area? Stacy, it looked like you opposed it. Do you want to?
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
go ahead. You can
Yeah,
always
so,
discuss
I mean, I
first.
could see this being taught more at a college level, that integration. I feel like, kind of with some of our numbers that we have and achievement, I'd like to see the kids, the students spending more time taking other electives rather than creating another one, that's not going to be based solely on studying history. So I would not support this, even with the new information provided.
Okay, anybody else?
I have a comment.
Oh, Meredith, go ahead.
I am in full support of this. I mean, kids have a choice of what classes they're going to take. They get to do that selection with their parents' guidance. And I am not in favor of banning course curriculum that looks very solid and teaches our standards, because to me that's saying we're mandating what they're being taught in history. So I am in favor of that free choice.
Anybody else?
I guess I just see it as, I like the course because I think students it's music, so they're gonna be really engaged. And I think it's a great and creative way to discuss history. And I think a lot of times history can kind of fall on deaf ears because it's not sometimes that engaging for students, and it's just a way to be able to do that. So I would be in support of this. I think that it might get kids excited about learning.
Any
I
other discussion?
I support Stacy's sentiments. But, lacking requirements, this may be the only history these kids study. So I'm in favor of that.
Anybody else? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
No,
Okay, motion carries 5-2. Then we're on to other business. State Education Convention, who's got the
Yeah, I can
information for
do,
that?
I can grab onto the last two.
Last two.
So State Education Convention, if in fact you are interested in attending, we really need to know, it's difficult to find rooms right downtown Madison. If you want, the district would support, board members in
This is in
attending.
Milwaukee, right?
In Milwaukee, correct. You should be getting emails from WASB that, you can take a look at to see what the topics are, if you have any interest. But I would ask that, by probably about Monday at the latest, that you, indicate to, Lori if you are attending so that she can, take care of your, room arrangements. You could choose to attend and then not stay down there, which is fine, it's up to you. Then we just need to register for you. But typically, board members who do go down to the state convention stay down there for one or more nights. So just up to you. The second piece is just information. We have 3 of our current board members whom seats will be up. And so the time for non-candidacy deadline is December 24th. Please understand that December 24th is a Saturday, I believe.
Friday.
It's Friday, and we don't have school, we're not working, it's a holiday here. So if you are choosing to not be a candidate, the deadline is the 24th. We ask that you do it by the 23rd only because we don't have something that day. If in fact you are going to run, and this is anybody, candidacy and campaign and financial statement deadline is Tuesday, January 4th at 5 p.m. So again, I'll say that one more time. The candidacy and campaign financial statement deadline is Tuesday, January 5th at 5 p.m. And then, assuming that we have people who are interested in running for the board, the election then would be the 5th of April. If there are twice as many people who are seats plus 1, which in this case would be 7 people who have completed the candidacy, campaign, and financial statement by the deadline, we would then have a primary on February 15th. That's just information for all of you. If you have any more specific questions, Lori is the expert on what forms and when and how.
How soon can we file? Like now or do you have
Yes,
to wait till
yes.
December 1st?
You can file at any time. You just cannot declare candidacy until the district has the candidacy and campaign file statement.
Okay.
We're accepting them at any time. Tom, your question? No.
So I know a lot of times people can pick up forms here. When are those forms going to be available to individuals?
They're at the front desk.
Currently, they're available?
Yeah, and during our hours, the office is closed just between 11 and noon.
Yes,
Um,
but if they call ahead of time,
yeah,
we can make
just let us
accommodations.
know, absolutely.
It's not 11 till.
And it was, just recently attended an election training, and it was noted that individuals should not announce to the public that on any shape, way, or form that they are running for the position until they have their campaign finance statement and their declaration submitted.
Okay, any committee meetings, building and grounds? Finance?
We'll have a meeting next Wednesday, December 1st, and the committee.
Personnel?
Nothing scheduled out or with.
Curriculum?
December 16th.
Okay, otherwise, our next regularly scheduled meeting will be Tuesday, December 14th at 7 o'clock. I would entertain a motion and a second to adjourn.
And
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we are adjourned, and it's 2:19, Gary, so you got 11 minutes.
it is,
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that, between now and the time of convention, that our board has the ability to discuss all of the proposals. We didn't do that last year. So, we were